guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new around here, welcome. My name is Julia and I am currently a fourth year medical student. You know, I get a lot of questions on a daily basis across all of my social media sites, and it's really hard to answer everything, so I figured why not centralize it and really do a Q&A, a question and answer for you guys to get all of your pressing questions answered about anything, whether it be personal questions, academic, or my journey related questions, professional questions, whatever you want to know, this is the place to be. If you guys are not following me on Instagram, be sure to follow at the Julia Carter. That is where I will be pulling the questions that are submitted for my future Q&As. So I'm going to answer the questions in the order that they are submitted, so I apologize in advance if they are not grouped or if the topics seem to jump from here to there all over the place. I will put the questions up so that you can see them throughout the video so that you know which question I am answering. So with that, let's waste no time and jump into our first question. So for my first question, how tall are you? This is such a funny question to me, you guys, because in the virtual world and YouTube and social media, we often forget that like we don't see these people, right? Like you may think you absolutely know somebody or you know their personality, you've watched so much of their content, but you don't often know like the simple details, or like how tall are you, you know, where do you get your coffee in the morning? So I am 5'6", you guys, 5'6", standing at a solid 5'6". I love my height. I feel like it's like right there in the middle. Like I'm not too short, I'm not too tall, clothes fit me really well. So 5'6". What are some things you like to do outside of school? Really good question, you guys, just because school consumes so much of my life. It's so much of what I talk about, so it's nice to kind of talk about the other things that I do enjoy doing. So I'm an avid traveler, you guys. I love exploring the world, seeing new things, new cultures whenever I can. I am a foodie at heart, so you can catch me at any restaurant, trying new restaurants, trying different kinds of food, eating. I am always eating. If I'm not working or sleeping, 90% of the time I'm eating, so that's amazing. I also just started a new book. I love to read and just acquire new knowledge, which is nerdy, but I started reading this book on real estate investing, so rental properties and how to really get into the real estate game to build generational wealth for myself and my family and all of that. So I love reading and just kind of being a homebody, watching Netflix, watching sports, being outside, being active. So those are just a few of the things I like to do. I also love cooking and baking, you guys, so I'll have to make you all like some cupcakes or something at some point. So I have a question. What other medical schools were you accepted to considering? Love your videos. Thank you so much. So at this moment, I don't remember the exact list of 10 medical schools I was accepted to. I'm sure it's in my archives somewhere, and I'll make a video on that in the future. But for the sake of this video, the schools that I absolutely remember being on the list included Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School, Boston University, Cornell, Ohio State, Jefferson, and I'm drawing a blank. I cannot remember the rest for the life of me, you guys. But I will say that it was down to Cornell and my medical school. I know that those were the two I was heavily considering when I was making my decision. So of course, Cornell being very prestigious and being located in the heart of New York City, and it was really appealing to me in that regard. And Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School was exactly what I was looking for in terms of patient population, in terms of diversity and community service, as well as they gave me a full tuition scholarship. So I know that those two were the ones I was between, but I can't at this time remember the entire list of schools I was accepted to. I am sorry. Any tips for folks making midlife career changes into medicine? I would give the same advice that I would give to anyone considering a career in medicine, which is to make sure you're committed and passionate about medicine and healthcare. This is a long road, especially if you're making the transition in midlife. So you definitely want to make sure it's the right move for you and that it's going to be rewarding and fulfilling for you as a career, because it's just a long process, you guys. And you know, I would hate for individuals in any aspect of life to commit or, you know, dedicate so much of their life and their free time and, you know, their relationships and everything to something that really isn't fulfilling them at their core. So same goes for medicine. If you are not sure that this is the right career path for you, if you're not sure that you're getting the personal fulfillment and reward that others do, then, you know, just do some self-reflecting and some evaluating of what exactly you're looking for in life and what you're looking for out of a career, and find that. And for those who do decide to make the transition in the middle of life, good for you. You know, stick to your guns. And I know that, you know, you could be surrounded by a bunch of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 18 to 22, 23-year-olds, but don't let it deter you. Don't, you know, feel out of the loop or that you don't deserve to be here. You absolutely do. So go show them what you got. How can you get full ride scholarships in medical school? So I did an entire YouTube video about how I secured a full tuition scholarship to medical school. So please click the link and go check out that video. But basically what my 3 tips were in securing a scholarship or financial aid was to be a competitive applicant. So that includes your GPA, MCAT scores, and honestly just being a holistic applicant. Number 2 was about finding the right fit and making sure you pick an institution that aligns with what you're looking for and your own priorities and personal mission. Because number 3 is to ask for financial aid. So being a competitive applicant is going to give you leverage in that you probably have multiple acceptances to medical school, or even other, you know, smaller tuition scholarships that you can leverage. And finding the right fit is really key in all of this, because you want to speak to why you want to be at an institution, and only at the right fit does that come more organically, right? You can list the reasons very naturally why you want to be somewhere if it's truly where you want to be. And last but certainly not least, the third final key is to ask for financial aid, you guys. You cannot get what you do not ask for, or it's very, very unlikely that people are going to throw large sums of money or financial aid at you without you doing a little bit of probing and being a little proactive and seeking that out. So be sure to ask. The worst that they can say is what? No. Okay, so at least you tried. But the best that they can say is, hey, why not a full tuition scholarship? We really want you here because you've articulated beautifully why you would be an asset to our school, because this is the place you decided that is the right fit for you, right? So it's very much so a game, and play your cards right and you could be very successful. So my next question is things you learned in your step 1 prep journey. Well, I learned a lot of medical facts and medical knowledge, but I assume that you're asking outside of that, which is how to tackle standardized tests, you guys. It is not easy. The USMLE Step exams are not easy, and you really have to find the way in which you learn best and realize that what works for others may not work for you, and you need to be open-minded and adaptable and trying new things, right? I just posted a YouTube video about how Anki did not work for me throughout medical school, you guys. Anki is a flashcard-based program, so doing flashcards, and medical students love this app. They swear by it. I absolutely agree that it works for certain people and that it has its place in learning and digesting medical knowledge. However, it simply did not work for me. So that was out of the ruling for me. So really throughout my step 1 journey, and I did a YouTube video on my study resources and my plan and everything, but I really learned just how to approach standardized tests. I learned a lot of standardized test taking skills, such as one that I love to advise students to start using in their test taking strategy is to preview the question and answer. If you guys have never heard of this strategy, oh my gosh, it could be life-changing if you use it right and if you find that you like the strategy. But basically what it is that, so in medical school, a lot of our standardized exams, so our shelf exams and our USMLEs, follow a very similar framework for questions. So it's usually a clinical vignette or some sort of vignette. The last sentence or question of the vignette is usually what they're looking for, like what the main point or the question is. And then you have multiple choice answers. So a good test taking strategy that I've used all throughout medical school is to preview the question and answer. So I skip, as soon as I click on a question, I skip right to the last sentence or question of the vignette, read that question, and then I preview the answer, all of the multiple choice answers. This allows me to get a sense of what they're looking for. Usually that question is the theme of the whole paragraph, right? What exactly they're looking for. You get a sense of the answer choices so that you're kind of shaping and previewing what you need to pick apart in that paragraph of information, right? So a lot of the standardized tests, they throw a lot of the distractors in. They throw a lot of irrelevant information to really just make sure that you're able to get through the weeds and focus on the meat of what's important. But a lot of students get caught up in all the extraneous details, right? So previewing the question and answer really helps you go in focus because you know what you're looking for. You know how to pick out the information that will help you answer the question. So previewing the question and answer has been super helpful throughout all of my USMLE and standardized tests, as well as just, like I said, being adaptable, doing a trial and error of different resources because there's an abundance in medical school, and really just finding what worked for me and sticking with that. Regarding your video on Anki, what other study methods helped you improve on exams? So this comes down to really figuring out what kind of learner you are. So I realized throughout my own like self-reflection and everything in medical school when I wasn't doing well and kind of figuring out why and what do I need to do better, is that I'm a visual learner. So videos and watching individuals like draw things out, write things out, explain to me that I can see really helps me learn, so that I can like rewatch and watch over and over again till I get it. So I'm kind of a more like video based learner. So any resources that had like video capabilities where I was on it. So Boards and Beyond, Sketchy, Pixarize for kind of like the visual memory hooks, that really helped me. In the clinical years in 3rd and 4th year, I used online med ed, which is kind of the Boards and Beyond equivalent for the clinical years. So video resources is really what changed the game for me. I stayed away from like the textbooks and materials in which I had to read because I feel like at their core, you still have to be able to reason through it yourself. Whereas video-based learning, I felt like I was able to see into the mind or the thought process of the individual teaching, which is really helpful if you have an amazing teacher. And a lot of the med resources are taught by great teachers. So video resources changed the game for me. Did you take any gap years before med school? I did. So I took 2 gap years for my Master of Public Health degree. So that was a 2-year program. And then I applied for medical school in the final year of my MPH, which left me an additional gap year through which I was on like the interview trail and whatnot. So during my 3rd gap year, I worked as a medical assistant in dermatology in a dermatology private practice. So I took 3 total gap years before beginning medical school. They were the best things that ever happened to me. Not only did I get a higher level degree, which made me a more competitive applicant for medical school, but I also got to experience living in new cities. I got to experience working a full-time job and just like living and being an adult without being in school for a year, which was an amazing experience for me because I had just been in school for so long and now I'm still back in school for so long. So it was really good to just get some life experience, make a little bit of money, make myself a more competitive applicant for medical school, and then go to medical school a little bit more mature, a little bit more ready to commit to the nature of the journey through medicine, refreshed and rejuvenated. Do you have any tips for presenting on rounds? Woo! I love this question, you guys. I love this question because I like to think, not to toot my own horn or pat my own back, I like to think that I am a good presenter. I've been told that. I got a lot of feedback throughout my medical school training that I'm a pretty good like presenter of patients, new patients, follow-up patients, whatever. So like anything, there's like an art and a science to presenting. And I think you don't necessarily have to be the best speaker or have public speaking experience to be a good presenter. I think the make or break difference that makes someone a good presenter on rounds or not is the confidence that they have in the knowledge of their patient and what's going on. When you know your patient in and out and what's going on, you are able to streamline that information and present it, right? There's not much to the actual framework of presenting, you know, it's a standard presentation. You could find a mentor or resources online of how exactly to present a patient, right? Like, you know, you start with your history of present illness, you start with your past medical history, surgical history, family history, social history. There's a structure to it all, right? Which you can find that structure online. But what makes a good presenter from a not so good presenter on rounds, they could follow that same framework, but person A may not know all the details or the ins and outs of their patient or the timeline of events since that patient presented to your hospital, versus person B who knows all of that and more, so that when the attending interrupts your presentation to ask you, well, what does the patient do for a living? And person A is like, I didn't ask that, I'm not sure. And person B is like, oh, I'm sorry, the person works at a consulting firm downtown, they've worked there for the past 15 years, they have health insurance through their job, like, is there anything else that you wanted to know? That makes the difference, you guys. Not necessarily that you're gonna get your presentation right or that it's going to be 100% flawless with no flaws, but person A clearly did not know their patient in and out or know the details of all the little nuances, whereas person B, while they might not have presented it all right, they know their stuff and they know their patient. So also, presentations can vary widely depending on the rotation you are on, with the specialty you're on, the specific attending you are working with. So being able to pick up very quickly on what exactly the expectations are of your attending and the team that you are on as far as presentations goes makes for, you know, a good presenter versus a not good presenter. So someone who can read the room and realize on day one that an attending likes very short, concise presentations that have certain parts of the history or certain parts of the timeline of events makes for a really good presenter, right? If you pick up on that early, that the attending I'm working with doesn't want to know about what happened in the ED or, you know, the social history as much, but really values the assessment and plan on my presentation or something like that, you cater your presentation to that attending, right? So you don't want to be the person that gives a 20-minute presentation on surgical rounds. They will kick you off the floors, you know? So just read the room. Obviously in the beginning, start out thorough and cut down dependent on the feedback. So you want to make sure that you show early that you can do a full presentation, right? So you want to go through everything at first. You want to go through the HPI. You want to go through all of the history. You want to go through allergies. You want to go through your full physical exam, right? Your assessment and plan, your labs, your imaging, all of that stuff, your first few presentations, especially on a new rotation. But your attending, once they see that you have the ability to do that, they might, you know, ask you to weed out some stuff, cut out some stuff, in which case do so, right? Do what you're told, but you definitely want to start thorough and take away once you show that you're capable of presenting well, and read the room, you know, go based on what the residents, how the residents present, right? Like, notice who the attendings say, great presentation, or oh, that was a good presentation, right? What did they do? And emulate that, you know what I mean? So on top of just knowing your patients in and out, that would be my advice for presenting on rounds. Great question. I'm very passionate about presentations and presenting well, because there are some painful presentations to sit through, and it's not because necessarily a student or even a resident doesn't know how to present, but it's just, you know, you want to be concise. You don't want to be weeding through papers and papers and papers and be like, oh, I have the lab somewhere. You know, it's efficiency, right? Even if you have to write everything out, your entire presentation, write it all out. You know, you don't want to be flustered on rounds. You don't want to be disorganized, right? Like, you want to be efficient, you want to be quick, you want to be concise, but you want to be thorough, right? So that is my advice. Finally, I'm done. Advice for studying for long periods of time and picking yourself up after failing. So as far as studying for long periods of time, this is something I myself am working on. I am very scatterbrained. I lose focus very quickly. So the Forest app, there's an app called Forest. It has been extremely helpful in helping me lock in and focus. It's an app that basically rewards you for studying for long periods of time and basically locks your phone from doing other things if you are studying on the app. So it's been very helpful in helping me to lock in and focus and study and sit there and, you know, like, not be distracted by Instagram or Twitter or something online. As far as failing and kind of picking yourself back up, you guys, I cannot emphasize enough that you will learn more about yourself and your capabilities through your failures than you ever will through your successes. So it's really just a matter of finding the lesson and finding the silver lining through the failure and realizing that this was just a closed door because there's another one open down the line that is made for you, that is destined for you, right? So don't see things as a failure necessarily, but find the blessing in disguise and find the lesson in it and find a way to make yourself stronger and better as a result of that failure, and you will come out on top every time. Most of life is really just perspective and your outlook on things. So just try to stay positive through those experiences, through those failures, and find a way to come out on top. How did you study year 1 and 2? What actually worked for you? So you guys, as I've stated many times before, that, you know, my academic journey throughout my preclinical years was a journey, you know, and it was a lot of trial and error. I've literally tried everything under the sun, from going physically to classes and learning, you know, in the classroom setting and writing notes and lectures, printing out lectures and writing on them, right? Eventually I stopped going to lecture. I started podcasting or watching them online and not printing physical notes anymore, using my iPad and writing notes. I've tried Anki, I've tried Boards and Beyond, I tried everything you can imagine, you guys. So what I really found helped me in my first and second year was to know the lecture material in and out. You are tested, your school specific exams are tested on your lecture material. You know what I mean? So by focusing so much on outside resources that are more kind of like focused on USMLE Step 1, you might be missing things in the actual school specific curriculum, in the lectures that are going to be tested, right? So I found that knowing the lectures in and out, actually like knowing them and reviewing them over and over and over again. And obviously for concepts that I was not totally sure on or not fully understanding, I referred to online resources. So I referred to Boards and Beyond or First Aid or other resources, Amboss, that kind of filled in the fundamental knowledge gaps for me. But I made sure to know my lecture slides in and out, because that is the material through which the questions are directly going to be pulled from on your test. So that is what kind of changed in when I started, you know, seeing an improvement in my performance academically, is when I started to focus less on outside resources that were more USMLE Step 1 focused, and really started to get down into the thick of my lecture materials to make sure I knew the concepts that were being tested, and to specifically know the specific lectures that were unique to my medical school and the tests in my medical school. How many hours per day or week did or do you study, at least for the first 2 years and during clinicals? So this varies drastically from person to person. I will say that during my first 2 years of medical school, my preclinical years, I did not study probably as nearly as much as I should have been studying. I would maybe put in 3 to 4 hours a day because lectures, there's 3 hours of lectures a day, and I would watch all of those and study a little bit. And then on the weekends, I would say I probably averaged about 6 to 8 hours a day on the weekends. Obviously, that's a very rough estimate, especially because on exam weeks, like the week leading up to exam, those numbers rise dramatically, right? Because you're doing a lot more studying leading up to the exam than you were the week before. That was a non-exam week. So that is kind of generally my first 2 years. And like I said, I probably should have been studying a lot more. My grades probably would have been a little bit better. But as far as the clinical year, so the 3rd and 4th year of medical school, it's tough, you guys, because you think like, oh, now I'm on the floors, now I'm seeing patients, I don't have to study as much, there's not as many tests. But those shelf exams that hit you at the end of every rotation come up quick, especially if you're on like a 4 to 8 week rotation. The weeks are flying by when you're essentially working a full-time job and you're still trying to find time to study on the side. So during my clinical years, I didn't study time-based as much as I did quantity-based. So I had an amount of work that I wanted to get done in preparation for the shelf exam. So for example, I wanted to do a set of questions, a set of 40 questions a day, right? So if I waited to the end of the day after my clinical responsibilities, and that can take upwards of 2 hours, right, to finish a set of 40 questions. It takes pretty long, right? But if I found time throughout my day, right, on my lunch hour, in between patients for 10 minutes, and I, worked in getting some questions answered throughout the day, at some points I was able to complete all of the work that I wanted to for the day before the workday was even over. Sometimes I had, 15 minutes worth of questions left to do at the end of the day once I was done with clinic or being on the floors and whatnot. And some days I was unable to do anything throughout the workday, and I completely had to come home, and that was 2 hours after work that I had to study afterward. So in the clinical years, I think it's less so about the timing of how many hours of the day you're studying, but rather when you're able to complete the set amount of work that you need to do for yourself in order to finish X amount of questions before your shelf exam and whatnot. And you kind of, everyone finds different times at which to get that work done. For me, I tried to get a lot of it done throughout the day so that I didn't have to study as much when I got home, because at the end of a 8 to 10 hour workday, you're like exhausted, and studying for 2 hours is kind of unrealistic or isn't peak efficiency. So I tried to get a lot of it done during the day, and I was pretty successful on most of my rotations in getting a lot of my questions, a lot of my work done in between clinic and patients, and just being on the floors during downtime, so that I didn't have to come home as much at 6 or 7 o'clock and study for 2 hours. So that is overall kind of typically how I managed. Were you involved in any extracurricular activities? You guys, there is not enough time in this Q&A to speak on everything I was involved in, but yes, I was absolutely involved extracurricularly through medical school. I was involved a lot in community service activities, so a lot of just initiatives and clubs that were out in the community, volunteer work, all of that. I sat on my student council for 2 years. I founded and helped found multiple organizations in the diversity and inclusion space at my medical school. I served as a national representative for my medical school for the AAMC. I started a nonprofit during my medical school training in my community. So I've done a lot extracurricularly. I would say that it's not necessarily average. I was overextended a lot at times, and I would say that please focus on your academics first. Be a strong academic, student. And then obviously the more you are able to do extracurricularly, add that on to be holistic. But please do not be overly involved extracurricularly at the expense of your academics. Don't forget the day job. What are the most important things to consider when formulating a med school list? So this I'm actually going to throw back to you and say that what is important to you, because formulating your med school list should directly reflect what's important to you, whether that be geographic region, right? Whether that be diversity and inclusion, how diverse is the school? Prestigiousness is huge. So do you want to be somewhere super notable, super prestige, versus somewhere not as prestige, but might be great in their clinical experience or their autonomy or their community service, right? Or their research. So all of that to say, I think it's really important for you to at least have an idea of what you might be looking for in a medical school and apply to programs that fit that idea. Obviously, as you go along in your journey, especially on the interview trail, as you're getting to learn more about programs and figure out what is specific qualities or specific things that are unique to individual programs, you will find the program that resonates deeply with you and shares in your values and what you found was important to you. My advice is that there's more in common between medical schools than separates them that is unique, right? So you will get your medical education, you will get your training no matter where you go, but it's the other things you might care about that separate school A from school B. So just kind of figuring out what's important to you or what you think is important to you. And it's okay for that to change as well. It's okay to think that, for example, what happened to me, like, you know, I thought going somewhere prestigious or somewhere super notable or a top 10 school or something was super important to me, until I got on the interview trail and I was interviewing at those places that I thought I wanted to be, and I simply did not feel the same. I did not feel like I wanted to be there anymore once I was, you know, meeting the peers that I would be with or the faculty I'd be working with, and I just didn't necessarily feel it or like feel that that was the place for me or the place that was the best fit. And I listened to that. I didn't want to end up somewhere that was not for me for 4 years and not be happy. And I decided to go somewhere that truly felt right in my spirit, that felt like the right fit, that had so much in common with my personal mission and my personal values. So I would say follow your heart. Obviously, it's okay for your priorities to change or for you to have those light bulb moments that kind of hit you throughout the interview trail. But in general, just stay open-minded and find the right fit. What's the hardest part of medical school? So this is gonna be the last question, you guys, and I will briefly say that the hardest part of medical school is honestly just balance, like finding balance and time management. I'm kind of a very involved person in that I do a lot, not only in school and extracurricularly, but in my life as well. I have so many passions and hobbies, and finding a way to balance all of those things, manage my time and my commitments appropriately to not get overwhelmed, but still find time for myself and self-care and to be a human and to not be consumed by medicine is a challenge. And you know, we're still figuring it out day by day, and it's still a work in progress, but it's something that I think every medical student has to learn to manage themselves and their time and to make sure their well-being is intact throughout medical school, because it's very easy to let it consume you. So that is the hardest part for me, in my opinion. It's not necessarily the studying or, you know, the rigor of medical school. It's more so just that it consumes so much of you, and it's really hard to find and keep intact the other parts of yourself to make sure you're well and that your sanity is intact and that you're seeing your loved ones and engaging in your hobbies and passions outside of medicine. So it can be a challenge, but we all do it and we all get through it. All right, you guys, so that concludes my first ever Q&A. Be sure you guys are following my Instagram at @thejuliacarter. Follow me on Instagram, you guys. I'm going to continue to do Q&As moving forward periodically, just to give you guys a chance to ask me anything personally, professionally, academically, get your questions answered, get all your curiosities satisfied, let you guys know a little bit more about me, and really just put myself on Front Street here. This is my YouTube channel. I'm here to answer you guys' questions and provide you with insight, advice, guidance, whatever you need to help you move forward in life and hopefully reach all of your goals. So with that, be sure you guys give this video a thumbs up if you got some value out of it, if you got your question answered. Be sure to drop a comment below if you have any additional questions that were not answered in this video. Who knows, they might pop up in a future Q&A. And be sure you guys are subscribed. You do not want to miss the content that is dropped here on my channel. So as always, love you, family, be safe, be well, and I will see you next time.